G'day guys, it's Matt Paull here, and in this episode we're going to explore all of the additional PolyBrute 12 settings that offer additional functions for the existing modules and dive deeper into its software editor, PolyBrute Connect. Let's dive in. There are two ways to access settings on the PolyBrute. One, using the shortcuts by holding the settings button and either pressing or tweaking any button or control on the panel which has a little circle marker next to its name, or by pressing the settings button next to the screen on the front panel to go to the main settings menu. The settings are split into two categories on the left and right of the screen: preset and global settings. Options 1 to 4 in the settings menu are the preset settings. These are saved and recalled with your preset. They include settings for the synth voice, the output section, expression controls, and the preset information. We'll start by looking at the synth voice menu, which is divided into VCO, envelopes, LFO and voices, and voicing submenus. In the VCO section, first to cover are the two VCO's tuning menus. These allow us to set the VCO 1 and 2 tune parameter ranges from 1 semitone to 24 semitones. Additional octave range options are available too. When set to 1 or 7 semitones, the knob is continuous, allowing for fine-tune settings, and when it's from 12 to 24 semitones, it's quantized to semitones. This really helps us expand the timbres available from the oscillators. Next, there are VCO 1 and 2 tune modulation menus. These let us choose either continuous smooth modulation or quantized VCOs to produce melodic steps from melodic signals, which can be an amazing creative tool. VCO 2 tune modulation has fewer options available, although we can have it follow VCO 1 to access major and minor, etc. It's also worth noting that VCO tune modulation settings don't affect the global pitch modulation destination, so we can still add continuous pitch changes like vibrato. The Metalizer mode lets us choose whether the Metalizer only affects the triangle wave of VCO 1, its default behavior, or it's placed after you blend all of the waveforms for VCO 1 to create more drastic and wild timbres. Sub-level mode changes the sub-control on VCO 2 from crossfading the output of the saw triangle square blend to being an independent level control, so we can make the oscillator section sound even bigger. This VCO settings option lets us choose pitch quantization options if the value of a tune knob changes when morphing parts between A and B. Many of the tuning options are the same as what we find in the VCO tune modulation settings, but with two additions: A and B, which snaps the tune knob settings to their values for A and B as you cross the central point of the morph knob or the morphy y-axis, and octaves, which restricts the octaves between sounds A and B. Lastly, there are glide settings. Here you can choose if time glides between any two notes in the same amount of time, no matter how far apart they are. If the time is similar, but the glide time syncs to the master clock, as the glide knob is turned, time divisions are displayed, indicating rhythmic values. or if the rate links the glide speed to intervals, so the pitch takes 12 times longer to cover an octave than it does just a half step. On top of that, you can use buttons 5 and 6 to specify whether the glide will be smooth or follow the chromatic scale. Let's move on to the envelopes menu. Here we have VLO loop mode menus for the VCF and VCA envelopes. These give us the option to choose whether the velocity controls also change how the time of the envelope reacts. For instance, in natural, the attack shortens and the decay lengthens at higher velocities. We can also make this shorten or extend both the attack and delay. On the right side of this menu, we can also make the envelope repeat, either 2 or 3 times, or loop indefinitely. We can also do this for the mod envelope in its loop mode settings. On top of that, you can change the attack and decay curves for all 3 envelopes independently to more quick and percussive shapes. The LFO settings section has global retrig options for LFOs 1 and 2. So we can choose whether the LFOs retrig when a note is pressed after all the notes have been released when it's in mono mode. We can also choose whether they're in unipolar or bipolar in these menus, or the LFO 3 polarity menu. We also have sync division menus here, allowing us to change between binary, triplet, or dotted time. The final subpage here gives us access to the Voices mod source options, with each option producing different values depending on how many voices are triggered. Finally, the voice allocation menus allow you to define the voice's behavior in the various combinations of polyphony and tembrality functions. We have different poly voice allocations, including polycycle, polyreset, polyunison, and polyreassign. Polyunison plays the sound in unison mode, with each new key pressed at the same time, splitting the unison count out across all of the notes played. We also have settings for the voice stealing to take either the oldest, lowest, or to turn off voice stealing, and for unison mono modes, which can choose the voice priority and legato settings. We also have the same settings menus for the lower key splits when in split mode. The layer mode submenu offers 2 options. The first is morph layer, where the keyboard has 1 zone with 2 morphing voices per note, and if the morph control is at 0, sound A is doubled. When it's at maximum, sounds A and B are layered. And the second is the stereo layer. In this mode, 2 voices are allocated for each note played, and it pans them from left to right. Please note that only the 6 voices can be played. This mode can be used in conjunction with the stereo knob. The final menus let us choose the number of voices used when in unison, unison detune amount, as well as define the pitch accuracy, allowing for the voices to drift a bit more for the vintage feel. The out section menu covers the overall preset volume which is applied after the effects. The stereo modes menu let us choose whether only the voice is panned or the filter outputs as well. We also have the EQ, the modulation section menu, and delay and reverb settings. For delay, options include time mode, filters, and alt preset selection, while for reverb, you can access its high pass filter and alt preset selection. In the expression control menu, we can choose the pitch bend range, vibrato options including its range or if it should follow LFO1 or a sine wave. There are alternate aftertouch modes, which we'll discuss in a separate episode. We also have the Morph and ribbon modes, which affect the way the controller responds when you first press it and when you release it. The PolyBrute has 2 expression pedal inputs, and the menus let us choose their assignment destinations. Finally, there's an option to set a hold for the lower or the upper parts too. The preset menu has some preset utilities, including being able to reset the initialized patch or view the information on the preset, and we can also generate random presets and edit the sound designer info as well. The global settings options are stored in the synth and apply for all presets. We have options for syncing, keyboard, MIDI, and a collection of other useful utilities. The sync menu allows us to choose what source the PolyBrute will sync to. We can choose between the internal clock, USB or DIN MIDI clocks, or the analog clock input. Auto mode will detect incoming clock signals and sync to that, defaulting to the internal clock if none is found. We then have options for the resolution of the analog clock inputs and outputs. There's our metronome settings menu too, where we can change its volume and count-in settings. We also have tempo load options available. The keyboard settings menu allows us to change the velocity and aftertouch curves, set the aftertouch sensitivity, access expression pedal polarity options, as well as change the knob catch behavior. The MIDI section allows us to define the input and output MIDI channels, including separate channels for the lower keyboard split. We can set the output destination and input source independently, either to USB, DIN, or both. We can also enable the ARP or the sequencer to send MIDI out and turn off or on local control and program change, enable CC on knobs, or enable MPE functionality. For MPE, these settings control if and how PolyBrute 12 works with MPE. MPE on or off toggles MPE, and values include off, receive, send, or both. Bend range controls the reference range of MPE pitch bending for send and receive in semitones. This is ideal when controlling the PolyBrute 12 with alternative controllers that allow smooth bends for independent notes. Finally, in the miscellaneous area, we have various utilities. Compare gives us access to snapshots we make by pressing the Save button. We can perform a factory reset, check our current firmware, use auto-tuning to calibrate the VCOs and filters, and calibrate the various controllers, change the LED brightness, and the final option lets us determine the sleep time of the unit. When you have a synth this deep, a software editor and librarian is a huge time saver. PolyBrute Connect makes the experience of working with the PolyBrute in a studio as slick as possible and ready for the intense time pressure of working musicians. The first thing you'll notice is we get a near identical layout of the synth voice section of the hardware unit, with an effects section to the right and keyboard, matrix, preset settings, and global settings tabs at the bottom with 4 pages. PolyBrute Connect also makes it easy to update your firmware. Simply press the button in the lower right corner to start the process. PolyBrute Connect is also bi-directional, visualizing all the changes we make on the hardware on the screen, and sending all those changes we make in the software to control the hardware in real time. One of the most incredible things about this is that we can then simultaneously see and edit the settings for parts A and B, with all the knobs even moving to show the values as you morph. PolyBrute Connect can run as a standalone or as a VST plugin in your DAW. You can even have multiple instances of the plugin running within one project, and the PolyBrute will follow the most recently selected instance, allowing for a nice music production workflow. This not only means instant recall, making it super easy to switch between projects, but you can also automate the PolyBrute's parameters just like you would for any other VST plugin. The browser section will look familiar to any Arturia software instrument users. Here you can filter your presets by type, style, and bank, or search for specific names or terms. We can also rearrange the list of presets in the center alphabetically by name, type, or designer, and add a little heart to our favorites. As soon as you click a preset, it will load onto the PolyBrute. The preset info is displayed on the right, and we can easily save a new copy of the preset by pressing the Save As button, even creating a new bank in the process. This lower right side of the screen will allow you to browse and change the presets currently stored on the PolyBrute hardware in a list or as a grid mode. The left side of the browser offers the Projects section. Here you can create projects consisting of your chosen presets and then send them to the hardware either by clicking the Send to PolyBrute button or by dragging and dropping. Here you can also view the PolyBrute hardware presets section so it shows up in the main browser view. This is a very useful tool for touring or session musicians preparing for live shows or studio sessions, or even for artists with several contrasting creative projects. Lastly, in the top left corner, you have the main menu where we can access the software settings and find save and import and export options. Alright, so that's it for this tutorial. Hopefully this video has shown you some of the most unassuming options in a menu that can actually be a great source of inspiration, as well as the benefits from using PolyBrute Connect. I hope you can get your hands on one soon and enjoy it like I've been lucky enough to. So thanks again for watching, and see you again soon.